So we're talking about, there's a couple of different plates that are out there. There's Jelly Arts and there's some other company. They're all fine. The one that I have here is an 8x10, which I suggested you have. So it's going to come in a plastic container, and you're going to take it out of a plastic container like this, and you're going to take it out of that, but keep this container because this is where you're going to store it. On the front of it, you will find, on both sides, you'll find a plastic protective surface. So I have used this so much that my plastic got too much paint on it. So I replaced it with just a piece of copy paper, drawing paper. And so all you're going to do is peel off the top of your plate, whether it's the plastic or paper, whatever you are keeping it protected from, and keep that in your plastic cover. So put it back in there and put it aside. So I'm just going to say a couple of very basic things that those of you who've used it before know that the reason it's called a jelly plate is because of this jello-like kind of soft, pliable surface that allows for really good monoprints. Because if you know about printing on a machine, the rolls squeeze the paint onto the paper. In this case, you are doing it by hand, but because it's so pliable and soft, the paint really soaks into the paper exceptionally well, much better than a rigid surface. Now, because this is like a pliable, jelly-like substance, you cannot use anything sharp on it or any texture that, like, I always keep the bottom plastic or paper on it so that, because if you put this down on, say, a stencil by mistake, you put it down on there and you store it like that, it'll imprint on here. And so I always keep the bottom really protected. And so don't ever use anything sharp on it, no sticks, but you can use all soft things. And I'll explain this to you. The thing I want to discuss first are, and those of you who've done this before may kind of get something new from this. I'm going to tell you all the kinds of paper that you can print onto from here. So I'm going to put this aside for now, and I'm just going to talk about the different papers. So number one, these are just regular copy paper from my copier. You can use drawing paper. You can use any paper that is absorbent. You cannot print onto anything that is glossy or semi-gloss. You can, however, you won't get a distinct print. So it should be absorbent paper. And this is relatively thin, drawing paper. The reason why I like printing on something thinner is because I'm going to use these later in a collage, and I want to be able to stick the papers down relatively easily. If you're printing directly onto a surface that you're not going to be cutting up and gluing, then you can use something more sturdy. You can use paper, but you can use colored paper as well. You don't have to just print onto white paper. You can also print onto, I call this text paper, And this is old books that I am no longer using and I've torn out to use as paper that I can print onto. And I really do love working on plain text. You'll see when we get to print how amazing that is. You can also print onto magazine images if you'd like. I'm going to show you a little bit of a complicated issue. If the magazine is glossy, you may need to degloss it a bit, but sometimes it works okay. This one is a little less glossy, so I'll show you when I demonstrate printing on it. And you'll understand when we get to printing why it would be interesting to work on an existing image. The other thing, this is just paper that's like a graph paper that has these little squares on. You can print on any paper that's absorbent. I want to show you, though, the translucent paper that I love working on. So I always like printing on translucent, it's called translucent because transparent means it's totally, you can see through it, like glass is transparent. But this is translucent, it's semi-transparent. This here, and you'll see when I get to demonstrate this tissue paper is highly absorbent and works super well for layering. Now you can use regular white tissue paper, but I want to show you what I use. This is not regular tissue paper. What it is this food wrap from Smart and Final. And it comes in these big sheets and it's used for wrapping sandwiches and things. And it's very cheap. So if you want to get that instead of tissue paper, you can. You can use tracing paper as well for your translucent paper. This is a tracing paper pad. It absorbs things a little differently. It's not quite as absorbent as the tissue paper. And then the last thing is also translucent paper is deli paper. And deli paper is basically also the stuff, I think in your materials list, I've given you this link to also Smart and Final. It's basically an all-purpose dry wax paper. And so it has a slight waxy surface, but it's not completely waxy. And you can use this as for printing paper as well. And this works really well because it's very much more sturdy and not as delicate as tissue paper. So this works really well. So I want to just make sure that you understood that you can really print on any absorbent surface. And it's unbelievably exciting trying different ones. I'm just taking a brief pause to see if anyone has a question just on the papers. Please let me know if you do.
Kathy, did you unspotlight your place where you're working? Because it looks like it's just a regular square now.
No, I've just got nothing there.
Okay.
There's a paint tube. Do you see the paint tube?
I do. It's just small again. You had it spotlighted before.
Oh, okay. Thank you for telling me.
Kathy?
Yes.
Can you use newspaper? Does that
Yes,
work? Or?
Absolutely. the other thing, the other thing I want to talk about, sorry, before we do that, is the paint that we use. So, absolutely, studio acrylics, cheap Blick paints, or any studio acrylics are completely fine for this. So anything that you have would be, now these are pretty opaque, and that's okay. And you'll see with layers, doing layering over, that sometimes more transparent paints are fun to work with. So this is a golden paint, and this is it's called Golden Open, which means that it dries slower. And we do want these to dry relatively slowly, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But this has, you can see it's a little transparent because it has these 3 black lines here, and the paint over it shows the black lines pretty strongly compared to, say, this one, where the black lines are covered. So it's not a transparent paint. This one is. There are also golden fluid acrylics, which I didn't put in your materials list. These are pretty expensive, but they are really, kind of, to coin a pun, the golden standard. They work really well on the jelly plate. And I will do a demonstration with it, but I want to just give you that option. If later on, if you feel like just trying one out, but as I say, they are kind of pricey, and I don't want to just add that stress right now. Just do want to give you the option. So I'm going to start with just creating a plain paper, and I'm just going to start off with regular drawing paper, copy paper. The thing I'm going to need is a brayer. It's very important that you get a rubber brayer, not a soft foam one. It needs to be hard, and I'll tell you, you'll see when we work with it. So I'm going to start by making, let's just say I'm going to make a blue paper. I'm going to spread this paint. I'm just going to put that much and that much on here. I want you to be aware of, like, on very hot days, you have to work pretty quickly because the paint dries quickly. But today is not so hot. So you're going to take your brayer and you're going to roll the paint out. And you can see that it spreads pretty well. And what I do with the excess paint that's on here is I just have an extra piece of paper available to off-roll the ink, because sometimes that makes pretty cool papers as well. So all I'm going to do is put my paper over the plate, and I'm going to spread it. I like using the heel of my palm so that all of it gets absorbed. And then I'm going to peel off the paper. And you can see I have this plain blue paper, but it's different from just painting it. It has slight variations in it. I'm not sure if you can really see, but it has these slight variations in it that I really like for solid colors, as opposed to, you know, a opaque painted paper. So that, I'm going to put that aside for now. And in order to clean the plate in between colors, you take a spray bottle of water. You can also use baby wipes. And then you're just going to wipe it off. And you can do the same with your brayer. You can spray it and wipe it. I will say it's sort of more important to clean your brayer in a way because the paint sticks to it and over time it just builds up. I am not super diligent about cleaning my plate perfectly because I don't mind the undercolors kind of coming through, you know, so you'll see on like these edges are not perfectly clean. There are ways to clean this perfectly, and at the end of your session you can also just run it under warm water and soap, wash it and dry it that way. Make sure you don't put it down on like a towel or something without the backing because it'll absorb that texture. And if things are really hard to get off, you can also use hand sanitizer, supposed to work really well. So that is my plain paper. And, you know, when you guys are creating papers, I'd always encourage you to create a few plain papers in the colors that you're wanting to work with. Now, I'm not going to get into color too much now, where I'm going to do that. I'm going to touch on it, but I'm going to do it more next time. So that's just the plain blue. Now, when you start layering on top of that, what you want to do is create a second color and take away parts of that second color. So I am going to put on this aqua color. This part you may want to just watch me for because I'm going to show you something that you can then try out on your own. So the idea here, and I'm going to off-roll this aqua on there, and you see this kind of interesting paper you make in there. So the idea here is that you're taking away some of this aqua to expose the dark blue that you're going to do on top of it. I mean, underneath it. So here's a Q-tip. It's soft. You can work into, you can take out lines. You can, okay. You can also, if you don't use a Q-tip, you can take some string and lay it on the plate, just randomly. And let's see what happens if I now take, so I've taken away this and I've laid that on top. So I'm going to take this dark blue, put it over, and this time when I do this, I really want to like rub in between the string to make sure the ink in between gets on there. And the nice thing about this actually is that you don't really know how it's going to turn out. It's a lot of experiment. So let's take this off. And you can see where the Q-tips were taking out and where the string created like a mask for the aqua color. So now what you're going to you're going to lift this up, and you actually have a little bit left on there that you can do what is called a ghost print. And what I do is I usually take translucent paper for that. And this is deli paper. And I rub that so that, you don't know, this is like hit and miss. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But there is sort of a really beautiful ghost print of that string that I put down. Okay, so that's that. Now